Damp charcoal can drop the temperature in a room by several degrees with zero electricity, zero moving parts, and about $5 to $7 in materials. This is not a new discovery. It is a 3,000-year-old principle that Persian architects engineered directly into their buildings, and that most of the modern world simply forgot the moment air conditioners became affordable. Peer-reviewed research has documented setups using this exact principle, producing temperature drops in the range of 10 to 15 degrees Celsius, that is 18 to 27 degrees Fahrenheit, below outside air. Today you get the physics in 30 seconds, the exact parts and where to find them, and how to build a version of this for a bedroom, a barn, a chicken coop, a camper van, or a dorm room, all using the same $5 principle. Let us start with the physics, and it genuinely only takes 30 seconds to understand. You already know evaporation cools things down because your own body runs on this exact principle. Sweat evaporates off your skin and pulls heat away with it as it changes from liquid to vapor. The hotter and drier the surrounding air, the faster that evaporation happens and the more cooling you get from it. This is why extreme dry heat in a desert climate can feel more manageable than humid heat at a lower temperature, and why the same evaporative cooling principle is the entire basis of a swamp cooler. What activated charcoal does is take that same principle and dramatically amplify the surface area available for it to happen on. A single gram of activated charcoal has a surface area somewhere between 500 and 1500 square meters, making it one of the most porous natural materials known to exist. That is not a typo. 1 gram, roughly the size of your thumbnail, has a surface area comparable to a small apartment once every microscopic pore is accounted for. All of those pores hold water when the charcoal is saturated, and when warm, dry air moves across that enormous wet surface area, evaporation happens on a scale completely disproportionate to the physical size of the material. The air on the other side comes out measurably cooler because of the energy lost to that phase change, and it comes out cleaner at the same time because activated charcoal simultaneously adsorbs volatile organic compounds, odors, and a range of airborne particulates. This is the same material used inside household water filters and inside air purifiers that retail for $200 to $400, functioning passively and continuously for as long as you keep it damp. If you keep animals, this second function matters as much as the cooling. A barn, a chicken coop, a rabbit hutch, or a dog kennel in summer heat builds up a combination of ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, and other organic compounds that activated charcoal specifically and effectively absorbs. You are not masking that smell. You are chemically pulling it out of the air passing through the material. The research behind this is genuinely solid, not anecdotal. A study published in the Journal of Post-Harvest Technology measured an evaporative charcoal cooler achieving a maximum cooling differential of nearly 17 degrees Celsius, over 30 degrees Fahrenheit, between the cooler's interior and outside ambient conditions, in trials built specifically to test this exact charcoal and airflow principle for preserving produce without refrigeration. Multiple other peer-reviewed studies on evaporative charcoal coolers report similar double-digit Celsius temperature drops under favorable conditions. Worth being precise here. Most of this published research measures performance inside a purpose-built cooling chamber or storage box with engineered airflow through the charcoal, which is a close cousin to what we are building today rather than an identical setup, but the underlying mechanism and the scale of cooling that mechanism is capable of is genuinely documented in the scientific literature rather than being an unverified internet claim. There is real history behind this too. Persian architects were building tall, wind-catching towers, structures with openings positioned to catch prevailing wind and funnel it downward into living spaces, as far back as roughly 3,000 years ago. The most famous surviving examples stand in the city of Yazd, Iran, a location in one of the driest deserts on the planet that has been continuously inhabited for thousands of years, and where summer temperatures regularly exceed 40 degrees Celsius. These wind-catching structures, combined with evaporative elements like wet surfaces, underground water channels, and courtyards, allowed buildings to maintain interior temperatures measurably and meaningfully cooler than the punishing heat outside, entirely without electricity or mechanical refrigeration. Architectural researchers continue to study and document these structures today because the underlying physics genuinely works, 3,000 years before anyone plugged anything into a wall. Here's what you need for the basic build. Activated charcoal, specifically the kind sold for aquarium filters, loose black granules in a bag from any pet store or online. A 500-gram bag runs about $5 to $8 and is enough to fill a standard baking tray. Horticultural charcoal, or the charcoal sold for air purifiers, works the same way and is sometimes slightly cheaper per gram. One material substitution to avoid entirely: barbecue charcoal briquettes. That is a completely different, far less porous material and will not produce this effect. You also need a shallow tray or container, a baking pan, a plastic storage bin, or even a wooden box lined with plastic sheeting. Anything that holds a layer of charcoal while letting air move across it. Spread the charcoal in a layer roughly 3 to 5 centimeters deep. Pour water over it until the granules are fully saturated and just beginning to pool at the bottom. Let that sit for about 5 minutes, then drain off any standing water. You want the charcoal thoroughly wet, like a saturated sponge, not sitting in a puddle. Finally, you need airflow. An open window with a natural breeze works. A small battery-powered or USB fan aimed across the tray works considerably better and meaningfully increases the evaporation rate. If you are finding this kind of practical, forgotten knowledge useful, subscribe to this channel right now and hit the bell. Every week we dig up something that used to be common sense before it got replaced by something you plug into a wall. Subscribe before the next one goes up. Placement matters more than almost anything else in this build. A tray sitting on a table in the middle of a room does very little because the cool, moist air it produces simply rises and disperses without meaningfully affecting the space you are actually occupying. Position the tray on the floor as close as possible to wherever outside air is entering the room, typically a window or door, so that incoming air is forced to pass across the wet charcoal before it reaches you. That single placement decision is the difference between a curiosity that does nothing and a system that measurably works. Re-wet the charcoal every morning. Evaporation will dry it out overnight, and a dry tray of charcoal does nothing at all. 30 seconds with a cup of water each morning keeps it fully active. For a small space, a bedroom, home office, camper van, or dorm room, one standard tray-sized unit is meaningful on its own. For a larger room, 2 or 3 trays positioned at different points where air enters compound the effect. For animal enclosures and outbuildings, build a simple open frame from scrap wood, lined with hardware cloth or mesh to hold the charcoal in place, filled 6 to 8 centimeters deep and mounted directly in the ventilation opening of the coop, hutch, or shed where outside air enters. Every breath of wind moving into the enclosure passes through the charcoal first, arriving cooler, cleaner, and significantly lower in ammonia and odor compounds. Heat stress in poultry begins around 30 degrees Celsius and becomes genuinely dangerous above 38. So this is not simply a comfort upgrade for an animal enclosure in peak summer, it is a meaningful welfare improvement. One honest limitation worth stating clearly because it changes what you should expect depending on where you live. Evaporative cooling of any kind, charcoal-based or otherwise, performs best when relative humidity is below roughly 50%. In dry climates, the American Southwest, the Great Plains, and similar regions, the effect is dramatic and consistent, closer to the larger temperature drops discussed earlier. In humid climates, the Gulf Coast, the Southeast, and the Great Lakes region during muggy summer stretches, the air is already carrying significant moisture, which slows the evaporation rate and reduces the cooling effect, typically down to somewhere in the range of 2 to 3 degrees Celsius rather than the larger numbers possible in dry conditions. You still get the full air filtration and odor removal benefit regardless of humidity. Just calibrate your expectations for the temperature drop specifically based on your local climate. Recharge the charcoal every month or 2 by spreading it out on a tray in direct sunlight for a full day. Heat and UV exposure release the compounds the charcoal has absorbed and reset it to close to full capacity. It does not wear out in any permanent sense, it simply needs periodic refreshing, and one bag properly maintained will realistically last an entire season. A standard central air conditioner runs for roughly 750 hours across a typical North American summer, costing somewhere between $150 and $400 in electricity depending on your unit and climate, on top of refrigerant concerns and the very real risk of it breaking down in the middle of a heat wave when you need it most. What we just walked through costs about $7, runs on water and airflow, and cools, filters, and deodorizes the air at the same time. Persian architects figured out the underlying principle 3,000 years ago, well enough that the buildings using it are still standing and still being studied today. We did not forget this because it stopped working. We forgot it because something eventually came along that plugged into a wall instead. $7, 30 minutes, zero electricity, and physics that has already outlasted 3,000 years of better options coming and going. Share this with someone about to spend real money cooling a room this summer. The next video is already up. Go watch it now.